I get in my head a lot, and somehow like my immense passion for drums has always slightly outweighed this anxiety I live with and deal with regularly. And it's allowed me to really push myself out of my comfort zone. And in turn, it's really made me like a better version of myself than I really think any other career pathway could have done for me. And I think that that's kind of a beautiful thing. Like, so not only has drumming like helped me in that I'm passionate about it, but it's really like changed my life for the better.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like a really wonderful thing.
Everybody, give it up for Mr. Alex Rüdinger. Say hi to the fine folks out there.
How y'all doing? Good to be here.
That was great, man. Do you need to catch your breath, or are you like good?
Whew. Need to catch my breath a little bit, but I am good. Okay. All is well.
Great, man. I tell you, there's nothing like being in the room next to you, actually watching you play and feeling all the power. Man, it's really something else. It's pretty awesome, man.
Thank you very kindly.
So as I said, we got here Mr. Alex Rüdinger, and my name is Ash Pearson. I play in a band called Revocation. I teach here at Drumeo, and today I'm playing host, so we can talk about this man and his fine drumming skills. So Alex and I actually go back a little bit of a ways. We've been friends for many a year, and we have bands in common that we both played in. I play in Revocation, like I mentioned. Alex played drums playing live for Revocation as well, so we both had to learn the same kind of material. And Alex just put out a new record with a band called Intronaut, and which is fantastic, by the way.
Thank you kindly.
Fluid existential inversions, fantastic from front to back. And I was called upon when he was a little bit busy to play a show playing drums with them, so I ended up learning a bunch of Alex's parts. So yeah, we're contemporaries. We're kin, man.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
We've both played in some of the same bands, and I was especially excited to do Drumeo with Ash because, especially when I explain like the content that we're going to be talking about and all that kind of thing, it's really great to be doing this with someone I know. It's a good friend of mine, so I'm very, very pleased about that.
Glad to have you here, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, we want to say thanks to some of the sponsors. You got Tama and Meinl and Evans.
Yep.
Yeah, killer, awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
and
they'll take great care of me.
And you can also catch Alex online at Instagram, so at Alex Rüdinger.
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct. Yeah,
and you're always posting videos and some really great stuff. You're
Yeah,
always working on something, man.
I do a lot of nerdy content. I love drums, and then I also like just messing with stuff, doing weird hardware contraptions, and yeah, I'm a nerd.
I really like that about you, how you let people in on your world a little bit, and you tell them about all the little things that you do with like marking your rug or all that stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that'll all tie in real good with the stuff we're going to talk about today, and yeah.
And we're here to talk about a really important topic.
Yeah.
And this was at your suggestion, and we were all really happy that you had brought this up and that you were willing to come on here and talk about this. So the title for this lesson is Mental Health for the Modern Drummer.
That's correct.
So we're here to talk about drumming and mental health and how they're interrelated, and your experience with that, my friend, because we're all really interested to hear.
Yeah, well, to start, part of the reason I really wanted to talk about this in general is mental health issues, like primarily anxiety, depression, things like that, are things that I've dealt with a lot throughout my lifetime. And that apparently really surprises people. I did a podcast with a friend of mine, and we started talking about that. And to my surprise, it really caught the attention of a lot of people. I still get a lot of emails and messages about that. And a lot of people, I was shocked by how many people basically just kind of seemed like, they were like, wow, I never thought that you'd be someone that deals with that kind of thing.
Right.
And that surprised me because, even if you see an artist you really like online or anywhere, it's those people are all just human beings going through the same stuff. And so it's one of those things that I got such a good reaction from it that I kind of wanted to talk about it again in an even greater platform like Drumeo. And then also kind of discuss the ways that some of these things have really helped me as a drummer, because things like anxiety and depression, they just sound like these super negative things sometimes, but you can kind of utilize them in positive ways. And I think some of those things about myself really have allowed me to push myself and, really get to where I am with drums.
That's awesome. Really well said, man. So like, how has metal drumming, rock drumming, how does that aid you, like your mental state and even your body too?
Yeah. Well, the first point I'd like to make is if anyone out there is like not familiar with much metal drumming and that sort of thing, this is a very physical genre of music, rock and metal both, especially metal, the stuff I play. That first song I just played, there's some double bass in it, and honestly, that's like, for some people, if you're not into metal, you might be like, wow, this is like really fast, but that's actually one of the more laid-back Whitechapel songs that we play. And that's the band I tour with, Whitechapel. They're from Knoxville, Tennessee. Super good guys. And it's a very physical genre of music, basically. And one of the positive things about that, in my opinion, is that you kind of get like almost just from drumming itself, you get like a vibe very similar to like what people experience when they go on a run. They get like a runner's high almost. Scientifically even, like your body releases endorphins when you're exerting yourself. And that's been something where like there have been times in my life where I've really not been in a great mental spot. And playing drums, not only does I enjoy it, so it kind of helps me mentally like that, it genuinely, scientifically even kind of helps you. It helps your body and your mind. Mm-hmm. And that's why later we're going to kind of get into some more points on that. But one of the biggest benefits, in my opinion, of metal drumming is just that it really genuinely can kind of help lift you out of some of those headspaces. Yeah. And it really has for me throughout my life, that's for sure.
You get a genuine rush of endorphins when you play.
Absolutely.
What's the biggest one for you? Is it playing live, or is it just playing drums in general? Or is like you get the extra added adrenaline live, right?
Live, you definitely get this adrenaline that you don't get just playing at home.
Yeah.
And yeah, like even this kind of situation, like I just had some more adrenaline, than I usually do playing that song at home. Like I've played that song at home a million times, but the adrenaline kind of, it throws you off a little bit.
Right.
And for live, especially for me, I get a lot of anxiety, but it's usually after the first few days or the first week of a tour. It really helps me kind of get back into it, and I kind of start to feel more comfortable,
Yeah, and it helps you stay positive.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, so you live with this kind of stuff on and off almost every day, So,
Yeah.
So what's it like at home for you when it's just you and your drums, and what kind of relationship have you cultivated with it over the years, and like how's the drums helped you in your everyday life? Like what kind of routines have you cultivated with the drums? Like do you set goals and everything like that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like walk us through some of that stuff,
Yeah. Well, one thing I always do is I do like a pretty long warm up before I ever move to the drum kit. I have this whole routine for practice. I start on pads away from the kit. I warm my body up. And that kind of like, it's very much a mental thing for me too. Like I have to kind of like get into a certain zone, before I can really like be like, all right, I need to focus on this, especially if I have tons of stress and anxiety, whether it's because of music related things, like I'm stressing about getting ready for a gig or whatever. It's one of those things where I just have to like give myself time at pads to kind of get my body in check, but also my mind. So it starts there before I move to the kit, and then I will work on the kit. I really am a big fan of like structure and routine, and I feel like that really, comes out in my drumming, to be honest.
Right.
It's very relevant. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So for drummers at home, how you warm up on a practice pad or something like that before you go and work on some more complex things on the kit. I think for what you're saying, Alex, is like your warm up is kind of the base level as to where you start before you get into. That's just the foundation that you lay before you get into more complex things.
Absolutely,
like learning tunes or trying to work on something specific.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, got it.
You nailed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. So what does your warm-up like in general just kind of look like? Without taking us through it, because I'm sure it's pretty extensive, but what kind of stuff do you do when you're warming up?
It's a very extensive warm-up, that's for sure, but it really is a lot of single strokes. I kind of look at it as a, in addition to being this thing that aids me mentally and physically, it also is kind of a conditioning thing. So like I will warm all my limbs up to fairly high tempos, and sometimes I might not even be working on stuff that's crazy fast on the kit when I actually move to the kit. But in that sense, that's where it becomes like a conditioning thing. I play in these metal bands, they require me to stay pretty on top of my physical self because I have to do that kind of exertion when I'm drumming. So I will always warm up my body to those high tempos. I start out very basic, like paradiddles, accented, and that sort of thing. It's all timed out to a metronome. Yeah. And then the core of it is, it's kind of funny actually. I basically am just doing like an alternating 16th note roll with my feet. Yeah. And then my hands are actually playing in unison, kind of like, if you're familiar with metal drumming, it's basically like a slow bomb blast.
Bomb blast, right.
Yeah, so I'll try to do it here on the snare. It's weird to play in unison on the snare.
Right,
I normally would do that like on a pad.
Right.
Let me put my in-ear in real quick.
Sure,
and then I'll just give you a little example.
Give
and
us
then
a
I'll
taste.
Yeah, a little taste of the warm-up. So basically this would be like the bulk of it, and I do this for 3 to 5 minutes a number of different times. I usually start this at 180 BPM, but I don't have that queued up click-wise, so I'm just gonna kind of give you an example. So. Man, it's so awkward to play the snare like on a pad.
Yeah,
it's like, it's different. But basically with that, I'm focusing more on my wrists, warming up my wrists, and really just kind of starting to warm up my ankles. But I basically repeat that whole thing. I increase it in tempo. And again, a lot of guys on tour, they're always like, man, you're insane for doing that every day.
Every day, even when you're at home or if you're out on the road.
Yeah, I always do the same warm-up.
Yeah,
it's long. I did it right before I came out here,
Right.
It's part of my ritual, and it is very physical, but again, it gets me in this mental zone that also is crucial for me. As someone with all this anxiety, like it really helps me like level me out a bit, you know, before I go and do this thing, you know, and it's difficult to explain, but that's the best way to explain it. It is very much mental as much as it is physical. It's both.
Well, yeah, it sounds like that you take those negative emotions and you allow that to motivate you,
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's a point we'll end up coming back to. But that's what it sounds like to me. It drives you to stay disciplined,
Yeah.
and to chase that good feeling, and
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
It absolutely does, man. And I think having discipline when you're doing this genre specifically is pretty important. It is a very physical genre of music, and you have to stay on top of that to do it well, in my opinion. You know, it's.
I agree.
You have to exert yourself.
Yeah, man. You got to be really on top of it and disciplined for sure. Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. So like when you were writing for the new Intronaut record, I mean, why don't you walk us a little bit through what that was like? Because I mean, if anybody's heard it, it's really, really dense. There's lots of really great drumming on there.
It is very dense.
That couldn't have happened overnight. So, you know, I imagine it took you, you probably did a lot of warm-ups before you did went to the kit to figure this stuff out. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do that stuff every day. The Intronaut album's interesting, and to kind of use this as an example with kind of the overarching theme here, like when I started writing for that album, it was kind of one of the worst periods of my life, to be quite frank with you all. And I won't, you know, go into extreme detail on it all, but I was not in a good mental spot at all.
Okay.
But at the same time, you know, I got asked to do this album, and I really liked the music, and I was like, okay, like how can I write for this? Like what can I do? And it kind of is like almost what I came up with for a lot of that album is almost like a reflection of like what I was going through mentally. And this is one thing I really wanted to talk about. I know it's a little off topic from the warm-up, but using those negative emotions in a positive way and doing something productive with them is something that's been really, really helpful for me, you know? And I'm able to take what I'm feeling inside and kind of put it out into a form of music. I mean, my whole process starts on a computer. I basically am really into transcribing and notating what I do. So I would come up with parts, and it's almost like I was in this negative headspace and I needed like a distraction. I needed something to motivate me. And drums are this thing I'm super passionate about. And I was just kind of able to like utilize those negative emotions to come up with these creative parts that really pushed me. They were a very good distraction, like the entire process of learning them, you know? Like I would start with transcribing. Once I'd have ideas written out, then I would, you know, do my warm-up. And obviously this did not happen like instantaneously. It's happening over the course of days. But let's say I finished writing for a song, I'd print it out, and then I would do my warm-up, and then I moved to the kit and start practicing. But it was almost like I needed, I don't know, that album, writing for that album and learning it and then working on it, it's like got me through that time period. And that was a huge thing for me. And I really, when I listen back now, like I don't think I would have had a lot of those ideas had I not been in that kind of a negative headspace.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that's a very positive outlet for very negative feelings. You know, that's not to say that you should like look for things to be negative in your life so then you can, you know, be a good artist or something, you know, like you know, but if you find yourself in that kind of a space, like it's a far, far, far better outlet for those types of negative emotions than, you know, turning to something like drugs or something, you know, and a lot of people want something that kind of numbs their pain if they're going through that, you know, and it's also not the only, drums aren't the only outlet, but you know, things like therapy and stuff are also very good. Absolutely. That's something I am a huge advocate of. I've seen a therapist on and on like my entire life. You know, I have no problem talking about this kind of thing. I think it's great. I really, you know, recommend if you're feeling anything like that, it's very good to go and get some professional help. In addition to that, you know, like it is helpful. Like if you have friends and family that you can talk to about things you're going through, like that's great, of course. But I think even still, it can be very helpful to have an unbiased
third party.
Exactly. And you know, because even friends and family that like think they're being objective, on default, they might subconsciously not be fully objective because they know you and care about you, and that's wonderful. But it's important to have. Sometimes you need for growth to happen. You have to have some insight from someone else.
Really well said.
Thank you,
man. Well, while you're still warm and stuff like that, how about we move on to another song? What did you have prepared for us?
So next, I'm gonna do an Intronaut song, and this one is gonna be a kind of cool example of. There's some pretty out there parts, and with anxiety in mind, let's hope I nail them all good because I'm a little anxious, and it's gonna be good though. So this song, it's got some really tech parts in the middle. There's this really interesting hi-hat groove. I played on an open hi-hat first, and then I moved to the ride, moved back to the hat, and there's all these ghost notes, and they're played a little bit strangely. They're almost like, it's not like a traditional ghost note form, A lot of the time ghost notes kind of just naturally fill in the blanks. These were much more composed and thought out.
Yeah.
And this was one of the parts I wrote when I was really in that kind of weird headspace.
Right.
One of the first ones I did, actually. So
what's the song called?
It's called Tripolar.
Tripolar.
Yeah,
awesome.
and the new Intronaut album just came out via Metal Blade a couple weeks ago. It's brand new. It's called Fluid Existential Inversions, and I personally think it's probably the coolest thing I've been a part of, so I'm very proud of it, and I hope some of you guys will check it out after this.
I'm inclined to agree. It's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Nice work, Joe, Dave, and Sasha. And, props to Danny Walker. Amazing drummer, too.
Yeah. Thank you very kindly, dude.
You bet.
I will do Tripolar, and
Great.
then we'll talk some more.
I'll be right back. You play.
Oh, you're leaving?
No, I'll be right back.
Oh.
I need to sort something out.
I'll see you later, buddy.
Play your heart out. Great job, man. That was an awesome
Thank
song.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Man, that middle part that's in 5 or whatever, like, yeah, that's...
Dude.
I mean, I get the basic pattern and everything like that, but like the little ghost notes that you put in and everything, all of a sudden turns it into a game. It's a game changer.
I messed a couple little tiny things up in it, but again, like, it's interesting, you know, like with this kind of being about mental health and everything, you know, a lot of people see me online, like I have these perfect drum videos, they're all flawless.
Right.
And that's very much, you know, like I do that at home, whatever, you know, I have this home studio set up, I can record, I'm by myself, I'm like comfortable. But this is a good example of like when you are very much pushed out of your comfort zone, it can be very stressful, this kind of thing. You know, I'm doing a live stream, I'm, you know, recording close mic'd under the microscope, so to speak. And it's just one of those things where, like, to me, it's immensely stressful. But it's a good thing, you know. It pushes you out of your comfort zone, and yeah. So I don't know, man. It feels good. So I'm almost glad for people to see like little hiccups here and there. You know?
Man, I can relate. I mean, when I've been on Drumeo, when I like been teaching or been hosting or whatever, I mean, it's a completely different kind of thing, playing and everything like that. And there have been times where I've dropped a stick, or one time a beater came loose. Like right in the middle of the song, I was playing, and I had to stop and everything. So it's kind of stressful. Stressful, but you know, you just deal it, you get through it, and it's usually pretty awesome.
Yeah, man, and that's one of the things I think is really important, is that for people to understand that side of it, that like even your favorite drummers out there, like any of them, any of the greatest ones, like, you know, people are still human beings, they're still getting stressed out, you know, some less or more than others, but like, I don't know, man, you know, I've said this a lot in lessons over the years. Like, if I can do this, if I can have a career as a drummer,
then anyone can.
I really believe that, dude. Because I am, you know, I get in my head a lot, you know, and somehow like my immense passion for drums has always slightly outweighed this anxiety I live with and deal with regularly, and it's allowed me to really push myself out of my comfort zone, and in turn, it's really made me like a better version of myself than I really think any other career pathway could have done for me. And I think that that's kind of a beautiful thing. Like, so not only has drumming like helped me in that I'm passionate about it, but it's really like changed my life for the better. And I think that that's like a really wonderful thing.
Yeah, and if I may say, I mean, you're one of the best guys on the scene today, man. And you're still relatively young, and just I think this is a direct result of your work ethic, which we're here to talk about. And yeah, I'd love to relate this to, you know, what other people go through. You know, they might not be preparing for a really big gig in front of thousands of people or something like that. They might be preparing for just their first talent show or something like that. You know, man. And so yeah, I'd like you to describe you know, what people are going through. Maybe if they're beginners or intermediates or something like that, they still feel a different version of what you feel, just maybe on a different level. I'd like you to describe the sort of the patience that goes in to having a goal set, and even you don't. Most of us know you don't get to where you're trying to go in a day or in an afternoon.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
What's that like for you? You know, and what do you think that's like for other people?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, one thing. This is another thing I talk about in lessons a lot of the time. Is it's really, you know, for people that are basically working on something, trying to improve at drumming. It's very, very difficult to see change when you're smack in the middle of it. You know. Like I get people a lot like, man, I've been doing X, Y, and Z, and I can't, you know, get the result I want. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I do think it's, you know, it's a good thing if you're not sure if what you're doing is right or wrong. You know, take lessons, of course. You know, check out Drumeo, like get some direction. But in general, it's definitely helpful to have that, to have someone saying like, no, you're doing the right stuff. Yeah. But the biggest thing, and this is a very important thing, is I would really encourage younger people, especially, to not be too hard on yourself, because I had a very intense tendency when I was younger to be really, really hard on myself, and that would kind of just pigeonhole me into this like even worse mental state. You know, and the analogy I use is kind of, imagine like you have a friend that, you know, he said to you, hey man, I want to lose some weight. You know, and you're like, cool, man, that's great. I back that, you know. But you see this friend every day, you see him every day, you hang out, 3 months go by, and then one day you look at him and you're like, dude, you like are thinner. Like, and he's like, yeah, dude, I've been going to the gym. You know, I lost all this weight. And he's like, whoa, like I just noticed it. Like, and it's one of those things where like you couldn't witness that change, you know, until there was enough of it, you know, because you're right there with that person all the time. And it's the same with drums. Like, you know, it's really hard to see if you're actually progressing until you're far enough progressed where you can reflect back and be like, oh, wow, I was improving. And I lost sight of that a lot when I was like in my teen years. And, you know, even now sometimes I get really in my own head and I'm like, man, what am I doing wrong? Like, why can't I learn this the way I want? And then, you know, months go by, you know, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I am getting this done better. Like, and, you know, so I really encourage people to like have some patience with themselves and trust that like this instrument especially, like you get out of it what you put into it. And, you know, if you're doing the right thing, just keep doing it, give yourself a break and be patient and don't let it, you know, for me, it definitely would sometimes make my mental health worse because I would just be so hard on myself. And really like I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was doing all the right stuff. I was just kind of impatient.
Yeah. Well, you were younger and you still had some lessons to learn about that.
Absolutely.
I guess, and that's what you're here to tell us your perspective on, and that you've sort of moved either. If you haven't moved past it, at the very least you understand it a little bit better. You know?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, there's this dude, Damon Che, Don Caballero. I mentioned him to you. He said like, you're just canoeing. You're canoeing up a stream, and then you don't even bother to, you don't even bother to turn around. But when you finally do, you look and see how far you've paddled. Yeah, you know.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. So I guess the key is probably just to keep on paddling. You know, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, even just for people, you know, if they're doing their first performance, you know, they're drumming at a talent show, they're doing their first concert. Anything like that, you know.
Yeah, the level is almost irrelevant, you know. Like.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is it's, you know, I remember, it doesn't matter if you're playing in front of 100,000 people or 10 people, you know, like people are still going to experience the same kinds of anxiety, you know. The level at which, you know what's really odd actually is that I feel less stressed out playing huge shows than I do small shows.
Yeah, I can
like
relate.
So much less. And the reason for that, I think, is that like, you know, I did some big festivals in Europe with Whitechapel last summer, and you're so far away from the crowd. You know, I think a couple of those, there was like 40 to 60,000 people. Like the whole European summer festival circuit is no joke. And,
yeah, those are great.
You know, I'd never done anything like that, like ever in my life. But I found that I wasn't very stressed out. Like I you know, was more relaxed than usual. And I think it's because at that level, the stages are so big. You're so far away from people, you almost have this slight disconnection. You know, I feel more stressed out in these small, intimate things, and it's just interesting, you know?
Totally, yeah, like sometimes one of my mental tricks that I play on myself is like, I kind of just pretend like it's me playing drums in my basement. Yeah. You know, even though I'm in front of like thousands of people, but in my basement, there's no consequences. If I make a mistake, I'll just keep playing and finish the song, and it's no big deal. And that's kind of the attitude I try and bring live. I'm still trying to bring my absolute best live, but I don't want there's no pressure when you're kind of just you know, at home by yourself. Absolutely. Just practicing. So if you can bring that live, and you'll get maybe a more genuine performance as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think music for me as a release is this is actually something I really wanted to talk about too. You know, Drumeo I don't think they've had as many metal dudes on here as a lot of other genres of music. And for starters, I just want to say, like, thank you. It's very cool to be like a metal guy that gets to come on and do this. I've always wanted to do this, so it's like, you know, even for as anxious as it makes me, it's something that's, you know, it's exciting and it's an honor, and I'm very happy to be here doing this.
Yeah, man. Props to them too. They have open minds. That's what I really like. That's really what I like about them. They're down.
Super nice dudes. I've had a really good time here so far. So
wicked.
But yeah, I mean, in general, I've always had people that like don't listen to metal. If you're someone out there that doesn't listen to metal, drumming, or music in general, you know, a lot of people hear it and they'll hear like harsh vocals and they're like, this is so weird, how does anyone listen to this? Like they're shocked by it. And it got me thinking, you know, I'm a textbook overthinker, as Ash knows. And it got me thinking a lot about why people listen to music and that sort of thing. And one thing I just want to mention kind of for the people out there that don't really understand it fully is that I think there are kind of almost two, and this is kind of just a concept I've come up with, but there's like two main reasons why people listen to music. I think there's one where they listen to it, if they're in a certain mood, they listen to it to kind of influence their mood. So if they're unhappy, they'll listen to something positive to kind of lift them up, and that's the release.
Right.
Whereas on the other side of that, which is kind of the side I identify with, I listen to it, it's more of a reflection of your mood. And the reflection of your mood is kind of the release. It's like, it's kind of like mirroring like something you feel on the inside, and that acts as the release. And I urge people to think about that kind of thing when they're, when they might find themselves being like, how does anyone listen to this? Just because it really is like a release in a different way than some people might be used to.
Yeah, yeah, man. That's awesome. It's almost like it's a form of understanding and perspective too.
Yeah.
Understanding if like a music is matching your mood or whatever, you kind of feel, you identify with the artist and feel that that person is feeling what you do, and then also perspective in the sense that like if you're listening to a style of music in of a mood that you're trying to get into, kind of thing, and then that kind of allows you to be like, yeah, you know what, this person's right, everything is gonna be okay, or whatever it is, or yeah, maybe I should dance and have fun or whatever,
Sick.
Yeah. So to your point, I think music is definitely release. It always has been for me, and that's why I gravitate towards it so much, and especially the drums. So.
Dude, yeah, me too. And that's in general, it's been. I think when I was younger, when I was a teenager, and I first got really into metal, at that point in my life, I kind of existed in this like very negative state where I was negative for so long, I like almost didn't know there was any other way of living. Really, like from my early teens to later, and it wasn't until that point, at some point in my very early 20s, I kind of was like, I need to make a change, or I'm like, to be frank, like not going to survive. I was not in a good place, and that's when I started going to therapy, and it really massively changed my life. It felt like a blanket had been pulled over my head that I didn't even know was there. But during that whole time, I think it would have been a lot worse if I didn't have music as this release, and drumming especially, as my extension of music. And I got into metal, a lot of that, because it reflected how I was feeling at that time and at that age. And even now, there have been times, everyone has these ups and downs, everyone will experience trauma in their life at varying points. But for me, life's been a lot better as of late, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's still, it can still act as like such a great release. And one of the things I want to play at some point, I don't know how much time we have left, but one of the things I want to play is, another Whitechapel song that's kind of like that. It's from their newer album.
Yep.
And
The Valley?
The Valley,
right.
Yeah. And I actually didn't play on this album. I joined like right after, or I started playing live with them right after. The drummer that performed the song of the album is Naveen Koperwise, who's a good friend of mine as well, killer drummer.
Yeah.
But this song is a good example to me of something that was like a really wonderful release for me. Like, I think Phil Bozeman is a phenomenal vocalist in the metal genre and lyricist.
Yeah, right.
And it's interesting because, I was a fan of this band prior to playing live with them and working with them. So it's very satisfying to like play something that you're so emotionally connected to live with the band. That's really made me feel wonderful too. I feel proud to represent them even just in the live capacity.
Good for you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
I pretty much stand behind everything that I've done, and I can definitely relate to you.
Thank you.
Before we get to that song,
Sure.
I just wanted to get back to one more point about the discipline that's involved with what you do, and just having exercises that you can sort of do without really needing, regardless of your the way that your mood waxes and wanes over the different days, you have like sort of a constant common thread that sort of helps you through all that. So your discipline, your routine that you built for yourself, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, one of the things, and that I'm glad you reminded me of this, because this is like a pretty important thing that I wanted to kind of talk about. So there were times when I was a little younger, or even now, in more recent years, where I would really not feel like practicing. Like I was not always in a great mental headspace, and it was hard to really even work up the motivation to sit down at the kit and like really work on something. And one thing I started doing when I was a lot younger is I would be like, okay, like I need to practice, but like I'm so mentally exhausted, like I'm not doing well, whatever, you know, you may be going through. And I started basically doing endurance exercises and working on new techniques kind of as this thing to be productive without exerting yourself mentally, like not expending much mental energy. And there's more to this, obviously, but basically I would sit down at pads and I'd say, okay, like one thing I can do to be productive is like work on my finger technique that I use in like blast beat, which is something I, you know, at one point I never, you know, I use this like French grip for my fingers. I had never done that before. We're talking like, you know, mid-teen years.
Right.
And I was like, well, I can work on that, I guess. And it seemed like this really, this way to be productive and work on something new without you expending all your mental energy, like I said. And that would be a really good thing. So I'd sit down at a pad, right? And I would just be like, all right, I'll just like put The Office on, you know, on Netflix with the subtitles really low in volume, and I'll just work on this technique for like 20 minutes. And, you know, so I would start doing that, or I'd do some endurance exercise. And it became like this thing where it like, that's why I love doing endurance things or working on a new technique, because I wouldn't be expending all this mental energy, but all of a sudden I'm productive without using all that mental energy, because I might not have it to give, but it becomes like this exponential thing where upon just starting to do that, all of a sudden I'm like seeing a little bit of progress, and that makes me feel a little bit better. And in addition to that, kind of like what we said earlier, if you're doing an endurance exercise or something like I do, and I talk more about, I have some stuff on my website that goes more into detail on those, but in general, like if you're exerting yourself, you know, your body's gonna release endorphins, like we talked about earlier with like the runner's high kind of concept.
And you keep your muscle memory going too.
Exactly. Yeah. So it would kind of start off that way. I'd be doing an endurance run, and then all of a sudden it's like, even though, you know, an hour earlier I didn't feel mentally like doing anything, all of a sudden I'm like just working on a pad, and I'm like, wow, like, okay, I feel a little better. Maybe I'll move to the kit, because this is kind of going better than I expected.
Right,
and it would, you know, just sitting down and working on a technique or something, you know, it's not creative. Like when you learn a new technique and when you actually can do it, or if you're working on speed and endurance, when you actually get faster or have more endurance, then you can use those things in creative ways. But until that, it's basically like strength training.
Right.
And it's no different than like, you know, people going to the gym and working out, you know? And in that sense, like, it's a way to be productive when maybe you're not in the best mental headspace, and that can kind of just feed off of itself.
Yeah.
You know?
And then maybe inspire you to be like, you know what, I am feeling pretty good now. Maybe now I'll go engage creatively into something.
And that's largely, like, that would happen to me all the time. Like, I'd work or something. I worked at a music store in those years, and I would get home from work, and this is like before I started touring and stuff, and I wouldn't, you know, I'd be like worn out, I'd be mentally worn out, I had some stuff going on in my life, whatever you might be going through, and I'd just be like, all right, I'll just like practice on my pads, I guess, and you know, see how that goes. And then in the process of just doing an endurance exercise or something, I would find that I'm suddenly more motivated to do more. And sometimes not. Sometimes I would do something like that, and then I would be like, oh, it's 9:30 and I'm tired, I'll just go to bed. But even that, like, I would feel a little bit better knowing I like made an effort. So it's like a low investment way to like try to get some productivity done without, you know, expending mental energy, which is a valuable thing, especially if you're not in a mental state to like do something.
Right. At least you did something.
Yeah. Exactly.
And for people at home, for you, if it's if you already, you know, it might be working on singles, working on doubles, just playing drums in front of the TV, even if you do 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, you know, for other people that might just be something simple versus like doing bomb blast warm-ups and stuff like that. Maybe you're just trying to keep your mind sharp with drumming and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Doing pad work, you know, you're in your apartment, you can't make much noise. Maybe you can just like play on a practice pad and just at least keep your dexterity fresh and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you'll at least feel like, hey, I drummed a little bit today, you know?
Yeah. And yeah, exactly.
That's
and
great.
then sometimes that can really feed off of itself. Like it encourages you to go out and do more practicing, and then move to the kit, be more productive, and I don't know, it's definitely been something that really helped me over the years.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and in turn, I kind of got faster because of it. Like all these metal bands I play in, it kind of started in this negative place, and I was able to like turn it into this positive, productive thing with drums.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
Man, I think that's probably as good a place as any to leave it for today. But man, I really want to thank you for coming out here all this way. And I'm really excited to see all the other stuff that you're going to get into. You're going to come here. You're going to film a couple choruses here, and I think you and I might end up doing a video too.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some cool stuff that we're going to get up to over the next couple days, which is great.
Yes.
And thanks everybody for joining us live and being here to witness the great and honorable Alex Rüdinger.
You're too kind, Ash.
Yeah, and man, before you play us another song here, is there anything else you wanted to add? If there's just one little takeaway, one little bit of information that you can leave people with who suffer from these kinds of issues.
Yeah, I would say everyone, and I mentioned this earlier, don't be afraid to reach out to someone if you need help. A lot of people don't expect to hear me say this, but I've been in some pretty bad mental places with depression, and I still, deal on and off with pretty severe anxiety, and these things are manageable, and they can really even, like I was saying earlier, like the anxiety part of it can really kind of work in your favor in some ways. It can motivate you to practice more, and you can learn to manage these things, but it can really be beneficial to seek out help if you might need it. And I encourage people to, seek out a therapist, and it's becoming a more common thing to do that, but it's still something that a lot of people seem kind of afraid to talk about or something. And I think that sucks. I think it's something that should be talked about. So I encourage you all to seek out help if you need it. Talk to someone professionally. And drumming, man, is such a good outlet for these things too. It's really basically saved my life, man. Drums, they're so rad.
Dude, drums got me through some stuff too, and I'm so happy that that we're able to do this and use it as an outlet. That's awesome.
Dude, mind blowing.
So what's the last song that you're gonna play us out with?
So I'll play Third Depth, which is a Whitechapel song. It's a little easier. It's like kind of it's a groovy song. It's one of my favorites off their latest album.
That's the one you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a lot of fun. There's some cool fills, some cool grooves. But really what does it for me is Phil's vocals. Phenomenal vocalist and lyricist. And I left the vocals in for this particular song just so you all could hear it. There's some harsh vocals as well as some clean vocals. And it's just a really good song. This was, again, like a song that was like kind of, when I first heard it, back in that 2018 period, I had a lot going on in my life and not a lot of good stuff. And it was like I heard it for the first time and I was like, man, this is like, it made me really feel something. It was such an immense release.
Resonated with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
And in that sense, it's, like I said earlier, it makes me very proud to, represent them in the live capacity. I really enjoy playing this song, so I'll go ahead and play it.
Yeah, you're the man, Rudy. We all love you, and we love tuning into what you got going on. You're just like one of the best things in the metal community going on right now.
Dude.
So
You're
keep
way
doing
too
your
kind.
thing, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man, for real. And also just thanks to everyone here at Drumeo for having me. This has been incredible. So, yeah. All right, so this is Third Depth. Let me get my in-ear in, and then we'll jam it out.
I can't wait to see your flesh. serenity. Never felt so empty. Sanity never came back to me. I'm not stable. I'm not stable. I'm not stable.
Dude, man, that was awesome. Wow.
Thank you.
You got such deep pocket too. You
Oh,
know?
man.
Yeah. Everything's spaced out. Oh man, I just love it.
Thank you. It's I mean, my feel has gotten better over the years. I still play very much on the downbeat. You know, I came up playing metal, dude. Like, there's so many drummers I look up to that are like so feel driven, and that came for me much later. You know, so
Yeah,
developing a feel
Yeah.
is, you know, it's almost like another world, man.
You got it, baby.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we got a Q&A going
Yep.
on for the members. And we got some pretty good questions here,
Cool.
actually.
Yeah,
so
let's do it up.
we wanted to pick your brain a little bit, my friend. Okay, so are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You got your breath. It's your breath.
Yeah,
filling you?
that song isn't too, like, it wears me out, but not it hits hard, but it's not like the
Yeah.
crazy speed stuff. Thank God.
Yeah.
Whew.
It's not like you were just finished Dancing with the Stars and you're like, hey.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Got it. Okay. So,
Sick.
Rock Bam Records asks, my depression is partially from you, Alex.
Why?
In being so good.
Yo, that's terrible.
Not
I'm
so
so
much a
sorry.
question.
I'll stop. I'll go
Okay,
home. Never
not-
play drums again.
Not
No.
so much a question, but a thought that many people share. How do you deal with drummers being better than you? That's a good question.
Man, you know, I don't know. I don't really think of drums in terms of like better or worse, you know, like
A lot of people do.
I know,
Yeah.
and it's something like I had a drum teacher when I was really young, the first guy I ever took lessons with, and he really made drums fun. Like there were times, I was just telling Ash about this the other night, actually. He made drums really fun, and there were times where I'd go in, I hadn't practiced what I wanted to practice, and he didn't like ridicule me or make me feel bad for like not having practiced that week, you know, he would just make it fun. And I think on some level he knew like, if it was gonna be a fun thing, or if it was going to be something that you really wanted to do, you were going to have to eventually take it on yourself to do it. And in that sense, what I guess I'm trying to say is that it comes from you. You know, don't try not to like worry about like, dude. I like almost constantly live in this place where like this is going to sound insane to a lot of people, but I'm being very serious. Like,
Lay it on us.
I live between this space mentally where I'm like, there are times where I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay at drums.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm all right. And then there are times, like, a lot of the time, I'm like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Oh my God, there's so many things I need to improve on. So it's like, I don't know, man. And I know that might, hopefully doesn't bum you out more, but like, it's one of those things where like, it's all about like what you're doing. Don't worry too much about what other people are doing. It doesn't serve you, you know, it's not gonna help you, and I guess perhaps that's easier said than done, I guess, for some people. But at this point in my life, man, like, I just want to play drums for me and enjoy it for me, and hopefully some other people enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
But for me, it really is like, if you're only worried about getting better than other people. Like, I'm not entirely sure you're drumming for the right reasons, to be frank.
Right.
You know, and it's like, because I see so many drummers time and again that I think are better than me every single day of my life, dude. Like, but I just don't really care anymore, because I'm doing it because I love it, and that's why I do it. So
yeah, man, you're trying to just be the best version of yourself, you know, and I mean, yo, I had to play a show playing songs that you wrote and that frankly nobody will probably ever play better than you. So I had to, I had to deal with the with the idea that I have to approximate this guy's stellar performance, and I have to just do it the way that I would do it. So I heard a long time ago, you know, like we already have like a Neil Peart, we already have a David Garibaldi. Instead of trying to be that person, there's already that person. And you're not going to be better than what they are just in terms of their individuality.
Absolutely.
You kind of just need to pursue your own path.
Sure.
Take somebody like you as an example and just use that as a motivator. Like, I see someone like you and I get inspired to want to play and to go practice on some of the things that you're good at, so I can be better at them myself and just be the best version that I can
and
be.
not to be better than me at them, but to be better at them for yourself.
For myself.
And that's
Exactly.
an important point.
100%.
I mean, and real quick, just to close that out, like, you know, a good example of this is when I was like a little bit younger. I remember I did the early 20s, I did a tour with Mac Artska. And I remember like he was pretty new at that time still, like just to join Animals not too long before that. And man, like I was so blown away. And I even remember thinking then like I can't do anything like that.
Who's
and
better than this guy?
Yeah, and it used to bum me out kind of that I couldn't just sit down and like rip a crazy solo.
Chop,
Yeah, and it's like, but to be honest, like that is not why I got into drumming. Like I like making compositions and like working with music and songs. And that's not to say that someday I might try to invest even more time into, you know, just my improv and that sort of thing. But like, you know, I'm okay with like, I want to do me, you know? There's already a Mac Artska and he's freaking incredible.
That's right.
So, you know,
Well said. There's a good question here from Joseph K.
Cool. What's up, Joseph?
Hey, Joseph. How's it going? As an old beginner who has dealt with anxiety disorders my whole life, I'm finding drumming gets me out of the rumination of negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, I get the thoughts of, I'm too old to do this, even though I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Any ideas on overcoming this type of thought?
Well, I mean, you're never too old to do it, dude. Like, you don't have to, like, you know, do it as a full-blown career for it to be meaningful to you. You know, it's like, I don't know, you know, I feel very fortunate in that I got started very young. I got, you know, the internet really helped me monumentally, and I, you know, I had the privilege of trying to turn this into a career, but, you know, there were times, especially times when mental health-wise I wasn't doing too hot, where I considered doing other stuff. I went back to school in my earlier 20s a couple times and ended up dropping all my classes and like continuing to do drumming, but like, you don't have to like make this a full-time career for it to have, if it acts as a release to you, you're not too old. It doesn't matter how old you are, you know, like at all, man. Like play drums because you love to play drums, you know. That's what I think.
Dude,
I don't know if that helps this individual perfectly, but like, dude, age doesn't matter. I don't know which camera to look at, but you're killing the game, all right? That one. Oh, yeah, we established that.
Well said, man. We got a question here from Aaron Levy. With everything that's going on right now, how do you deal with everything since it's pretty stressful situation going on worldwide?
Oh, you mean with like literal current events with...
Yeah, like all of what's going... Okay, for the context, I mean, you know, this might end up being a dated thing that people see years from now or something like that, but right now it's March of 2020 and there's like Canada just closed its borders to because the coronavirus is popping off all around the world. Alex kind of just barely got in here. And we're here today to bring him to you. Yeah. But he's asking you, I mean, there's lots of reasons to be anxious right now because nobody knows what's going to happen. Yeah. And I'm sure we all are a little bit. But I mean, currently, I mean, we're hanging out, we're doing other stuff to distract ourselves right now, but we got each other. Yeah. But how do you deal with those kinds of things? World events even.
Man, it is something... I still work on. There are times, like I think if you followed me on social media for a long time, you may notice that in the last couple of years, I've taken like longer breaks from it. I just won't post for a couple weeks or something. Social media is like this wonderful thing. The internet is this marvel that we should all celebrate. It brings people together, it educates, it's amazing. But at the same time, it can really add to your stress and anxiety. And
Yeah.
I mean, for me, sometimes I kind of have to disconnect and take a little step back and just kind of stop thinking about everything else in the world. And I mean, man, I used to be really, really negative. I used to have a very, very negative view on the world and what was going on around me. And when I really think about a lot of that stuff, sometimes it really bums me out still. But like, at this point in my life, I just try to do what I can to, literally do what I can, not what everyone else can do or what the whole population can do. Do what I can to like contribute positively and not continue destroying the earth or whatever, tons of social issues, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And past that, I just try to treat people decently and be happy myself. And you can't, it's like learning to let go of that control because it's out of your control. You can only do what you can do. And I try to keep that in perspective a lot more now than when I was younger. I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. It's your circle of influence, and you can only outside of that, it's pretty much you can't you still need to sleep at night, and you still need to try and be happy.
I mean, and
too.
I get it. For guys out there that are like super empathetic, like empathy is like this wonderful thing, man. Where it's like it can age you so much. Like I think people that are very empathetic, it's like there's a reason why like artists oftentimes. They say like the suffering artists, like they're more sensitive, they have like more input and they're creative. But on the flip side of that, like it also means you feel the negative emotions much more too,
Yeah.
And that sucks. But I understand that. Like, if you're a very feeling person, you feel these negative emotions even harder. Things that are going on in the world or around you, whatever. You just got to try your best to keep it in perspective. This is another perfect example of a time I think, if you haven't already, it'd be very beneficial to seek out some professional help and get some kind of unbiased third-party input,
Yeah,
So,
no, it's good, man. This is a question by Thomas Heiberg. Sorry. What do you do if you have mental control but your body is still shaking? So I think what he means by that is maybe if you're having a panic episode and you're trying to maintain, you're trying to just calm yourself down or something like that. So maybe if your mind and your body are at odds, maybe you're trying to, like I've had a panic episode before. And then,
are you talking in the midst of drumming or just in general?
I think in general.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you stay calm during, say, episodes of panic? How do you calm yourself down, your mind and your body?
It depends, I suppose, but I need to be alone for one. I've had a panic attack like plenty of times.
Yeah.
And usually I need to be alone. I need to breathe. I need to get some water. It depends who I'm around. Like there have been times where like having the right person around can be really helpful, but in general, like I think for me, I need to kind of like be alone. I need to regroup. I need to breathe and concentrate on my breathing. That really helps me massively. I'm not sure exactly if I'm like phrasing the answer to this question correctly, but it's a little bit of a like very vague. I hope that answers.
It's
I for me, I just need to focus on my breathing most of all and calm myself down and I don't know, man. It seems crazy to some of you guys probably to think like for me to like admit on this live stream that I like have had a panic attack, but it's like it's not crazy. Everyone deals with these stresses, man. Like you're not alone in that. I think that that's a really important thing for people to express. Like, dude, I was anxious as hell when we first started out here. I just get anxious. It's normal. People experience things.
Yeah. Well, actually,
stress.
I mean, speaking of that will kind of lead into this next question. Nuno Pereira asks, how do you deal with stress and anxiety before a show? Because I mean, that's fair too. You know? Oh man, I gotta go play in front of 20,000 people right now,
Sure.
and maybe I'm sick, or I feel well, I didn't, you know, whatever.
A perfect example of this is for me. talking about the warm-up like I did during the actual lesson we just did, that warm-up, like I said, is massively mental too. It allows me to just be like, okay, when you play live, there are tons of variables. There's so much that is out of your control. And for me, doing that warm-up, it's like, okay, I'm about to go do something where like anything could happen. Like there are variables, things could go wrong. But what can I control? I can control my body, if I warm up into it, and my mind, and how I react to situations. And in an effort to like make any given situation go as smoothly as possible, I will do that warm-up. It's like if my body feels good, and then there's some other issue, it's like at least you're not like, imagine there's like in metal drumming, there's some fast double bass part, right? Yeah. If you do a warm-up like that, it's like, well, now you're gonna worry a little bit less than about this fast double bass part, but you might be more prepared to take on whatever else comes your way. In other words, I kind of just try to control what I can control. That's all you can control. And the rest, I would say, largely comes from experience, man. Like like I said earlier, you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, and it can be, dude, like I still remember when I was 18, I went on the first tour I ever did, dude. I was freaking out. I was so stressed out.
Yeah,
and shout out to my mom for being one of the greatest parents in the world. I called her, where I was actually in Ontario, and I called her and she like calmed me down. I'm so fortunate to have such a wonderful parent. And it was still terrifying. I went to Europe, did these shows, but like I got through it. I definitely messed up a lot, but like I got through it well enough. I just managed to squeak by, and that like boosted my confidence. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're like, wow, I can do this. And dude, by the end of that tour, I was like on it every night, man. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just takes time. Be patient with yourself and know that you are capable of it.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
No, it's good. I mean, it's good to throw yourself into a stressful situation sometimes too, because sometimes that's the only way you will ever learn to deal with it is if you go through it too.
Yeah.
I mean, now I've gotten to the point where I played so many times live that I kind of know all the little tricks and trappings that my mind will go into, so I try and mitigate them throughout the day.
Sure.
I try and make sure I play my practice bag. I try and make sure my mind is sharp before I play. So I'll nap for like 20 minutes, an hour or two before I start warming up. I make sure I'm hydrated. I make sure I'm well fed, and then I make sure my notes are evenly spaced, and that I'm not trying too hard, and that my breathing's all centered and everything like that. I got a little ritual and everything.
Yeah.
But once I do that, put me in front of 1 million people, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always like that.
No.
But
yeah.
you kind of have to. You have to try different things out to see what works for you.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, it's like there are times where I'm not nervous at all, and then other times I still get nervous. You can manage it and get better at it for sure, but that doesn't mean it'll go away entirely. And just know that like if that's the case, like it's normal. People feel anxious and nervous about certain things. So.
This one is from Sherry Luivano. Question for Alex: does drumming help your mental health because you see the improvement, or does it happen as you're learning? Hope that question makes sense. So I think we sort of touched on this in the live lesson, where it's kind of hard to see the scope of the work that you're putting in until one day you kind of just wake up. You're like, oh man, I can play faster now than I ever was able to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in general, progress. It's not like this linear curve. It's like this thing where it kind of goes up, and maybe the next day it'll be down a little, but maybe not as down as it was. And it's like kind of this rocky up.
Right.
Change doesn't happen overnight, no matter what you're doing. But especially with drums, it's such a physical instrument. It just takes time to develop it, but it does. I would say it is satisfying. It definitely helps my mental health when I do start to see an improvement on whatever it is that I'm working on. That obviously motivates you a lot, and I talk about that sometimes when I've done lessons at home too. Is that the more you do, the more you want to do. Because you start to see some progress. And you're like, whoa, change, like I can get better, like at whatever it is you're working on, and that motivates you to keep getting better,
Yeah.
So I would say it's a combination. Like the process itself, the learning process definitely can be fun and positive and productive, but then also like the satisfaction of seeing yourself change in a positive way is also very helpful for your mental health. So it's definitely both.
That's great, man. We got one last question here.
Sure.
This is from Tink McGathy. Alex, Alex, other than your warm-ups, what are other physical things that you do to get your mind ready or keep focus while playing?
My warm-up is the main thing for me.
Do you stretch and stuff like that? Do you go for a run? Do you do sit-ups? Do you do
I mean,
yoga?
I love working out as well. And if it was up to me, I'd work out all the time. It's become increasingly harder to have the same workout routine that I had in other parts of my life because I'm busier with drums and music and touring, and it's really hard to maintain that stuff when you're also traveling all the time. But I love working out. I go to the gym. I like to lift weights. I like to do cardio, believe it or not. You know, a lot of people hate cardio, but I kind of like it. And
Great for drumming.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
I don't think lifting weights necessarily is like going to make you a better drummer though. Like I think when I first got into weightlifting, it was kind of like, I thought like, okay, let me like follow this line of logic. Objectively, if I'm stronger, I can hit harder and that sounds better under microphones and then I'll be better at drums. Like there might be some truth to that, but I've seen some skinny dudes hit hard.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, yo, that's sick.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's like exactly, I don't know if they correlate exactly, but
That's what works for you.
Yeah, it is, and staying healthy in general definitely helps my body and mind. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good, man. I personally like to stretch and just feel loose.
Yeah.
You know,
I do also stretch. Like I'll stop in the middle of a warm up and like stretch out my legs like that. You know, and I mean I can't do it because there's a snare drum here and I'm attached to this. But you know, in general, I can like go so far past my toes. Like I can stretch down to the floor, and that's all just come from stretching and warming up with drumming and that kind of thing. So
dude, that's great.
Yeah.
Man, thanks. I think that does it for all the questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks for your insight on everything.
Thank
too.
you. I hope people enjoyed this and have taken something positive away from it. So,
yeah, man.
Yeah, thank you, Ash.
Totally down.
Tight.
Thanks, buddy.